figure. Finally, and at last, Mr. Melmoth, they have called us forth to account for our crimes.
Right.
My crime was turning John Law into a cannibal.
True.
Yeah. If that's too much for you, we might as well get this stuff out of the way fast. I was thinking,
It's a good story.
Yeah, I was kind of inspired by the art and backwards.
We had the human skin story last time with SRL, so this one would be very fitting.
Yeah. And so the thing with John, we did it via placenta, but I always had the feeling that he could have gone maybe full cannibal. He did carry this big pot around with him for years. When he was over in Emeryville, they had it disguised by having some plants in it. But it was perfect for missionaries. I figure a couple of Mormons. He could have really dived off the deep end with that. But nonetheless, we have cards. I don't have any with me. With our
Suicide
names
Club
on
card?
No, just John Law, cannibal.
Okay. It's true. I ate both of his children's placentas along with several other people in a stew that he made. And I think the reason there were several friends of ours in the Suicide Club that were vegetarians, and I remember Don going to Gary Warren in particular and asking him philosophically why he was a vegetarian. And he said, "Well, animals die. There's cruelty. There's pain. There's this, that, and the other thing." And Don,
there's drugs. They drug them.
yeah. And Don posited that, well, would you eat meat if there was none of that involved in it? And he sort of tentatively said yes. So.
But the problem is, of course, becoming a cannibal. For some people, they just don't want to do it. I mean, no problem. I mean, if you don't want to become a cannibal, I can't really hold it against you. But Gary was with the Suicide Club, which of course where John and I met. And he was the de facto leader of it for quite a long time, and visionary. The guy who thought too much in some ways, but he's one of these people, and I actually haven't met too many of them who tried to develop a philosophy of life so that everything, flowed and made sense. And so I thought this would be a good one because he was a vegetarian, but he had a really crappy diet. He liked Taco Bell. that was one of the contradictions.
Yeah, but he didn't eat meat though.
Yeah.
But very unhealthy in that regard. But he had, like he had a philosophy about it. And with Gary Warren and Adrian Burke and Dave Warren, who were kind of the people who started, there were other people involved. Actually, oddly enough, for some of you in this, there's several people from the Suicide Club in the audience tonight. I'd like to point out among others, we have what the person I would call what was called the fifth Beatle, which is Kathy Hardy, right over here, who was supposed to go out the night that the Suicide Club was founded. The four other folks, Adrian Burke, Nancy Prussia, David Warren, and Gary Warren, went out to the Golden Gate Bridge to Fort Point, where there's a big chain along the seawall during a giant storm, and hung onto the chain while the waves were crashing over them. And had they let go, they would have died. And that was the founding of the Suicide Club. Kathy was going to go, but he had pneumonia that night, so she would have really died if she had gone.
Excuses.
So yeah, that group was driven by the philosophy, in part of Gary Warren, but many other people that came together in the group that developed some, I think very interesting ways of thinking about doing things in the world. And Don was a big part of that in the beginning of the group. One of the things that we were involved in, because the Suicide Club, I guess give a primer for the Suicide Club for those of you who don't know what it was. Started in 1977. It came out of the earlier free school movement, which is a bit difficult to explain, but free universities had popped up all over the country in the 60s as a kind of a response to the student unrest. And college administrators of some good note wanting to try to connect with students. So they started these free schools. And Communiversity was the one in San Francisco, and the Suicide Club was posted as a class in Communiversity. And then that's how it started. It was kind of an odd compendium of people, a group of people that had been doing classes in Communiversity, but they were the kind of the real more extreme events, kind of charade, a charade of a class. They weren't really classes. They were more pushing people's boundaries, how they wanted to explore the world and basically challenge their fears. That was one of the things. Also, just to kind of make fun in the world. So Don got involved, and
Yeah, I got involved. I actually just got an email from a guy a couple weeks ago, and I realized he was telling me about this one. Came over to San Francisco when I was there, and we went around, saw all these people I know, like G. Sutton Briding, the poet guy, and his brother Bill, and some other people. And I hadn't really thought about it very much, but I realized, yeah, this is the guy, because Gary was part of the circle with the Briding family, the Briding clan. They were all from West Virginia, and they came out to San Francisco in 1967, and Gary pretty quickly followed them out, and that's how he got to San Francisco. And Gary started in the Inner Sunset, this bookstore called Circus of the Soul. And this guy wanted to go to it, so we went. His name at the time, he's from Walnut Creek originally, Kirk Stevens. And I told Kirk I might mention his name in Atlantis tonight, so there's that. But pretty soon he moved to Wisconsin, and he changed his name to S. Flinzing Arthur K. Halaneth. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Make life hard for yourself, right? But a nice guy. But we went out, and because I happened to be there, and Gary sensed I might be interested, he invited me out on what was the first sewer walk through Oakland, which is John's first event as an event leader. And that's how I got into it.
right, the sewer walk. So Gary Warren and David Warren were kind of recruiting people through Communiversity to be in the Suicide Club. And when I met them, they were kind of sizing up people, and I was a really young guy, and I was very excited to do things. And I think they saw me as sort of a mechanism, because I was a very good climber. And a lot of the things that we were doing, we ended up sneaking into abandoned buildings or climbing urban infrastructure. And we didn't know how to do it, like so many things. We didn't really know how to do anything. Suicide Club, let's put it that way. I'd say we were rank amateurs at everything. But the thing that made it interesting was that we wanted to try to do everything. And that was the trick. And so the sewer walk, David Warren remembered going in these storm tunnels when he was a kid. And he was 42 at the time when I met him, when he co-founded the Suicide Club. And I thought he might as well have been 100 years old, because when you're a 19-year-old kid and you're hanging out with a 42-year-old, this guy's like living on, good Lord. I mean, how can he do anything, right? So, and I'm serious, that's what I thought, because I was 19, right? And you have to think that when you're that age. And so he had remembered going in these tunnels when he was a kid, and he says, let's go check them out. So I think Gary and he wanted to help kind of like bust me out as an event organizer, because I was very excitable, but they didn't know anything. And so I said, well, they invited me to help them organize the event, the sewer walk. I said, hey, come on, we'll do it together. We'll do this thing together. So we went there, and I remember we're exploring these giant tunnels in Hayward, not Hayward, but in San Leandro, and then we came up a little bit further up towards Oakland, and we were looking for the sewer that David remembered when he was a kid. And we finally found one. We're walking through it, and David had a game leg, and he walked with a cane because he'd been in a horrible accident. At one point, we're walking along, and his cane literally sinks in the mud up to his arm, and he just basically fell flat on his face. So that's how organizing a Suicide Club went back at that time. So we figured out the routes, and then we did the event. We brought about 50 people into the sewer, and that was the first sewer event, which that was his first event.
Yeah, I can't remember for sure, but I think we came out near Mills College, right?
Yeah.
And if I remember right, I could be wrong, we had a potluck.
Right, we had a potluck. Everybody packed potluck dinners. There were certain little, like with any organization or group, there are certain little rituals that grow up around it if you're creating your own culture. One of them with the Suicide Club was that we do events. Often they'd go late. Sometimes they were in places we weren't supposed to be. But we would always bring a potluck dinner in a pack, and then we would have dinner after the event. And in this case with Sewer Walk, we ended up in Mills College, inside this closed all-girls college, where we came out of the ground in a sewer tunnel, right? And then we'd have our little dinner there. And we ended up doing that event pretty regularly. We do it every year or so. And it got to the point where the security guards at Mills College recognized us. Oh, they're the sewer people. They're going to eat dinner. They're going to eat dinner, and then they're going to go back in the sewer and leave. So they're okay.
Yeah, there's no problems with the
Sewer people.
Starting John Agar.
Yes. Yeah, so there's just little things like that. And it was an amateur group. The most important thing to realize is the people in it we weren't actors or climbers. I mean, I was a good natural climber, but I didn't know how to do any actual technical climbing or rope work or anything. Don was an amateur.
On the other hand, though, John is very much the equivalent to your general ape. So,
Well, I used to be.
yeah, well, we're not necessarily talking today. This is historical retrospective, but if there's something that can be climbed, he can climb it.
I was pretty good at it. But and Don got involved. When Don got involved, there were several different things that influenced the Suicide Club. People's interests influenced the Suicide Club, and that meant anybody in the group. In Don's case, and it was an obsession that he shared with me and with Gary Warren and a handful of other people in the group, the Brighting family, they were all writers or wanted to be writers, and it was an interest in dark, weird fiction, and that had a big influence on the club. Not the only influence, there were many others, but with that said, we would start organizing and creating events based on stories that we like, movies that we like, characters, fictions that we got. And Don was at that time was involved in the science fiction and mystery fan circles, which were really big, and they predated the internet. I mean, basically, this whole group of people that corresponded by mail across the country and collected or were interested in fiction of some type or another. Maybe you can comment a little bit on that, on the APAs and how that stuff started.
Yeah, maybe. Just for general point of interest, I think all this stuff we're talking about predated the internet. I mean, Suicide Club's 1977 through 1982. And the Bridings did fanzines, or the zine culture. There's still a zine culture. You can, surf around on the web and find stuff. Bill Briding actually started a new zine. It's very, I don't know, it seems pointless to me now, but I told him I'd write him, something for him, do it in a few days. And Sutton's still, he does poetry. He's done the same kind of poetry now for 40 years. It's much easier to get it printed now. In those days, they had mimeographs and the whole thing. But part of my interest in the material was particularly the Lovecraft Circle, weird fiction, Clark Ashton Smith. And I came back to San Francisco. I'd been to San Francisco in 1974. That's when I met the Bridings, and very casually met Gary at one of their Thanksgiving dinners or something like that. And then I got lured off to St. Paul, Minnesota, 75 and 76. The big part of that was I got to hang out with Donald Wandrei for 2 years.
Co-founder of Arkham House Press, a long-time pulp writer from the 30s and 40s, and an all-around amazing guy.
Yeah, John, I gave him an introduction later when John got nearby, and he was able to do it. But the thing with Wandrei, well, he did all this stuff. He was one of H.P. Lovecraft's best friends, and Lovecraft died, I think, March 1937, and I might be slightly off on the dates, but Wandrei, as an 18-year-old, hitchhiked from St. Paul, Minnesota to Providence, Rhode Island to visit Lovecraft. And at that point, and this is, I think, 1932, maybe 33, so about 3-4 years before Lovecraft died, Wandrei was the only person, besides Lovecraft, who had ever read The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath and The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. Because Lovecraft, there were 110 pages, 150 pages of scrawled little handwriting, and he absolutely refused to type them up because he absolutely hated typing. So if you can think of that, the Wandrei is sort of this mysterious figure. He was great. He was almost as close, I think, as meeting Lovecraft, but not quite the same. But John can vouch for that.
Oh yeah, well John gave me an introduction. I was working in northern Wisconsin. It would have been in the early mid '80s. They gave me an introduction to Wandrei, and I was a total fanboy. And I have to say, he was a co-editor of Arkham House Publishing. I mean, the mother lode of weird fiction. I mean, the font, the Holy Grail. And so meeting somebody like that was, it was like meeting, I don't know, like a rock star. I don't know who. I mean, to me, it was really a big deal. And I remember knocking on the door. He lived in this big old house up on top of a hill in St. Paul. Knocking on the door, and he opened the door. It's a big, beautiful house, and he opened the door, and there's literally books and manuscripts piled up halfway up to the ceiling, all in a little corridor that went through them into his room. And I had a friend with me who worked with me on the mineral survey company I was working for at the time, who had no interest in or knowledge of weird fiction whatsoever. Harry Patch was the guy's name, and we sat there for like 4 or 5 hours and just listened to this guy tell stories and talk about stuff. And Harry knew nothing about this genre whatsoever. Had an amazing time. Really loved speaking with him. And Don, he also brought me to meet Fritz Leiber on my 19th birthday, because we were roommates at the time, and he didn't tell me me what we're going to do. He just said, come on, let's go. We're going to get on a bus. And we got on a bus and we went downtown San Francisco, rung a doorbell in the Tenderloin, in an apartment building in the Tenderloin, and Fritz Leiber opened the door.
Yeah, but I faked John out first. I took him to 811 Geary Street, which is where Fritz had been living. John knew he'd been living there, and that's where he wrote and said Our Lady of Darkness, also known as the Pale Brown Thing.
Right. Which, if you haven't read, is a must-read San Francisco novel, Our Lady of Darkness. One of the best novels set in San Francisco.
Yeah, and so we went there, looked at it, and John goes, and we walked down the street. Fritz has just moved, and so I slipped John into Fritz's apartment, and he's kind of floored. He liked Fritz. Fritz was a very great guy. His father was a Shakespearean actor later in Hollywood. He got to kill, he's in a ton of movies, but he got to kill Basil Rathbone in A Tale of Two Cities. He sentenced Errol Flynn to galley slavery in The Sea Hog.
And they're both really tall men. I mean, Fritz Jr., our friend, was probably about 6'7" or 6'6", something like that.
Yeah,
and his dad was also very tall.
Yeah, stupid, tall. And one of the things I know John talked a lot about at the time, to bring it back on topic, is that Fritz was almost the only writer he'd ever read who was aware of rooftops.
Right, correct. Fritz wrote about rooftops. One of his most famous stories, and is considered, one of the handful of classic American ghost stories, is called Smoke Ghost. And he wrote it early. He lived in Chicago, and he used to take the L to work all the time. And he got this idea, and he wrote a story about shadow ghosts. He was running along the L, and be looking out the window of the L, and he sees these shadows doing things that shadows shouldn't be doing. Shadows without anything casting them. And he started delving into it, which is always a bad idea, to delve into things like that. I'm not going to say what happened.
Well, particularly in a supernatural horror story. It's just,
yes, you don't want to do that. And Fritz expanded upon those stories. Fritz was a character in probably Don's ultimate game that he created for the Suicide Club. We'll get into a little bit later. I don't want to get into that right now, but Fritz Leiber played a character in that as well. These live action, they call them LARPs now. I mean, they got all these crazy acronyms. Who would want to do a LARP, right?
What a stupid name.
Or even blogging, when blogs came out, I'm thinking it sounds like you threw up on yourself, you blog. It didn't make sense as a word. It's like, why not call it something a little bit more elegant than that? But no, we can't do that. But so LARPs, which are live action role playing games, were a big part of the Suicide Club, and there were all kinds of them that we did. We'd show a movie, movies. We would project on 16 millimeter film, and Gary Warren owned a couple of 16 millimeter projectors, and Dr. Hal Robbins worked at the 16 millimeter film rental store on Lusk Alley in South of Market back in the late 70s. That's how we got to know Dr. Hal and how he joined the Suicide Club, for those of you who know Dr. Hal Robbins. And so we'd show these movies, and then we'd create these elaborate, usually pretty silly games based on them, and run around in costumes in Golden Gate Park at night or something like that. And so Don took that mechanism to heart and created 3 or 4 detective games over the course of many years in the Suicide Club. It became quite elaborate. One of them is detailed on the wall in the Suicide Club section over here on the wall, which if you get a chance to look at later. It was the only Suicide Club event that ever had a major article written about it, and the author didn't know that it was a Suicide Club event, because we didn't tell him.
In all fairness to John Jacobs, who was a major reporter for the Examiner, then he co-wrote Raven about the Jim Jones thing with Reiterman, the survivor.
Yeah. John Jacobs co-wrote the first major, and still to date probably the best book on Jonestown, called Raven. He co-wrote it with Tim Reiterman, who was one of the people who was shot on the tarmac by Jim Jones's, Angels of Death or whatever they called them.
Yeah. So Jacobs at one point we decided he could tag along, but we didn't want the Suicide Club out, I guess would be the term. We wanted to keep it secret. And somebody, Dimitri or somebody,
Told him.
Well, no, he mentioned the terms Suicide Club, and Jacobs, you could just see him going for it, and I deflected it. But he got in on it late, because the first person, and I honestly can't remember how the press got involved. I think it had to be maybe through Bill Costura and Frank Robinson, who co-wrote the book The Towering Inferno was based on, and he was a speechwriter for Harvey Milk.
And the movie they made out of Towering Inferno was the first big colossal disaster movie. It was very, very popular, and one of those big, flashy, everything's blowing up kind of movies. And Robinson was kind of tangential to the Suicide Club.
Oh yeah, he was just somebody who was there, but I think also his house over in the Castro was referred to as the house the Towering Inferno built or bought, as the case may be. But because of that, I think because of that angle, the first reporter to get involved was Randy Schultz.
Right, Randy Schultz covered the event, and the thing about it was Don was already doing the Dashiell Hammett Walking Tours. He had started doing them, and I'd like to point out this is why the Suicide Club was important to me. I mean, we're talking about past history now. This stuff's just happening now and today. There are things that this group influenced that are going on today. But with that said, the thing that was really exceptional about the group is it encouraged people to explore their fantasies, ideas, and their interests. And to take their interest and turn it into what we called an event, which could be anything. And then other people in the group would come on their event and help realize the fantasy that they had. That was Gary Warren's concept, I think, of like creating your own reality, and that was very important. So you get somebody like Don, who is very interested in mystery fiction and in weird fiction, and kind of wanted to be a writer but hadn't published, other than in fanzines at the time. And he started creating these worlds out there. Bill Costura, who was a science fiction fan, and he liked. We were sneaking into abandoned buildings all the time, a lot at the time, and Bill took up an interest in abandoned buildings, and then he took up a real interest in them. Then he started studying them. He started going to the library and studying them. Started going to the California Historical Society and studying them, and became a historian, a noted historian over the years.
Architectural historian.
Yeah, architectural historian.
Yeah, he works for Caltrans.
Yeah, he was a Caltrans historian for many years, and Frank Jordan appointed him to the Landmarks Board back in the late '80s or '90s.
Yeah. So, another thing too. This is worth keeping in mind. Historical moment. There were a ton of abandoned buildings in San Francisco. There were a ton of abandoned buildings in Oakland, such as the Fox Theater.
Oh yeah, right, that's right.
Yeah, we might get back to the Fox Theater. One thing I do want to mention, I was Louise Dromilowitz over here. You can raise your hand, Louise. Yeah, I got in trouble for years, but in the '90s or something. I would always say, I discovered Louise, and people would kind of be offended. I didn't say, I told Louise all this stuff to do, did stuff for her. I just said I discovered her. She came out on the Dashiell Hammett tour. I thought she had potential, and we got her into the Suicide Club.
She was recruited.
Yeah, recruited. And because of that, I was thinking of this when I came to the opening of this thing with John as the sign man, and I don't see a single thing. This would actually give me the credit for discovering John Law as a sign man. Do you remember the job Louise got you?
She got me a job at an engraving company.
Yeah,
right.
the sign company on the first block of Page Street or something?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and so that was my entree to the sign world. 84-page California Trophy and Engraving, that's right.
84-page California Trophy and Engraving.
Yes. So the point being, the people in this group we were pretty normal people. I mean, we had like day jobs, and we did pretty normal things, and like saying nobody. I mean, there were people who had interests. They developed these interests. To me, the important thing about the Suicide Club and subsequent groups that I've been involved in is they encourage people to interact with other people and to create their own world and to create a non-commercial, creative, collaborative world that you can actually live in sometimes. You have to do your day job and make money and do whatever, but you can actually interact with people on a level that doesn't require exchange of cash or money. And there are groups right now, the urban exploration, which was a big part of the Suicide Club. The urban exploration world right now is much bigger and more involved than it ever was in the 70s. There are groups all over the place doing it, and they don't talk about it. They don't put it online. They want to keep it secret. They're not doing it to get attention.
It's like you don't tell John Jacobs about the Suicide Club.
Right, it's like we didn't. And even though he did this like 3-page, really in-depth article about the event that we were doing, he never knew that it was a Suicide Club. Because we just didn't mention that. The reason that he did that article is because, like I said, Don was doing the Dashiell Hammett Walking Tour by this time, which he was encouraged to do through Communiversity, which is the free school, and then the Suicide. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's why you were kind of felt like I could do this walking tour and people would come on it. And he had a great interest in Dashiell Hammett and a good knowledge at that time about Dashiell Hammett, and he was a bit of a fanatic about it. So much so that he moved into Hammett's old building on Monroe Alley. When he first, one of the places you first lived in. I think when I met you, you lived there.
I was across the street. When I lived there, I didn't know that Hammett had lived across the street.
Oh, okay. I thought you moved.
Small world. Yeah.
Well,
No, I was only there 3 or 4 months.
But he did live on Monroe Alley, which is now Dashiell Hammett Street in San Francisco. And so his interest in this fiction, and he started doing a walking tour, and he did it for Community University. And when he first started, he wasn't a walking tour guide. He wasn't, he became very good at it. But when he first started, he just had a love of doing it. He was an amateur doing something that he loved, which developed into now a walking tour that's been going for 43 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I think this is year 42.
42 years.
I do have a standard line in the tour. If I'm talking, sometimes lately I don't even explain how I started doing the tour. I've been around so long, it's like, just accept it, it exists. But back in the early days, people would ask me how I started doing the tour, and I said, well, yeah, I read the stories, I liked them, and then I fell in with this group, who were doing Communiversity, this free college, I got kicked off the campus at San Francisco State, they're operating out of the inner Sunset, and I said, essentially, I felt the great, but nonetheless overwhelming impulse to keep up with the Joneses. All these people I knew, they weren't doing Dashiell Hammett tours, but they were doing some kind of class. And I thought, I should do a class too. Now, what am I interested in doing? It's like, well, I like walking around the city through all the alleys I know, and I like these writers, so let me dovetail these two activities. And that's how the tour started off. And early encouragement. I think my first couple of years I did them as Community classes, and then I realized, in theory I could make money doing this, but I didn't want to rip anyone off. Like John says, he didn't think I was very good, and I probably wasn't.
You got better pretty quick.
Hopefully. But I started out charging $1 a person. Wow. Okay, how bad can that be? Now I'm at $20 a person, but some guy, the phones and figuring out, the currency calculators and stuff, he says, well, $20 today is the same as $1 then. It's like, that's kind of discouraging in a way. But I just look at it superficially. It's like, 20's bigger. 20's bigger than $1, I think.
I wouldn't have thought of that, but that makes some sense. So the tours, I think I went on one of the first ones, and then there were a lot of exciting things that happened, including the guy, you remember
Were you on that one?
I was on the one where we chased the guy down, yeah.
Okay, so fairly early, probably it was 77, probably, maybe 78, but we're starting in front of the library, when the library used to be at 200 Larkin, that's now the Asian Art Museum. And we're standing there, probably about 20 of us, and half of us in the Suicide Club. And this black guy comes running down the street, and goes for it. And these people come running after him. He stole our wallet, like out of a car or something. And we kind of look at each other and go, And it's like, well, let's chase him, right? Okay. So we're chasing him. And big part of the story, and another way to date it, I probably have the date someplace, the Berkeley Barb had just written the tour up. It was like the first article on it. So all these in addition to the Suicide Club, there are all these Berkeley Barb readers. And we're chasing this guy. He's kind of pudgy. And after about 3 or 4 blocks, he's starting to slow down. And we're all,
not athletes.
Well, we're not in bad shape or anything, but it's more, we're chasing him. What are we going to do with it? What's happening? This philosophical pause in the action. And this one guy from the Berkeley Barb Readers, a big guy, a lot bigger than me and John, he just goes right in back of him, and he stiff arms him with both hands right in the back. And the guy does a belly flop, sliding down the cement. He gets up and he's pulling a screwdriver out of his back pocket. Apparently he uses that to jimmy open cars. And the Berkeley Barb Reader kicks it out of his hand. And I reach down and grab the screwdriver. And the Berkeley Barb Reader has pulled the guy to his feet. He's opened the switchblade knife and he's got the point in the guy's throat, about right here. And the guy is totally frozen. And the people who alerted us come up.
They were hung juries on all 3. He was never convicted. There are a lot of different stories. What really happened, no one will ever know, but it's a very fascinating story. And it was the incident from Hollywood that the Hays Commission came out of, that they started really censoring movies after that because of this horrible Hollywood debauchery that was going on. It happened in San Francisco. So he based the game on that, and he put it out to the people who were really interested in major characters. He recruited some from the walking tour, including the fatty Arby. He was looking for a fatty. It's very hard to find a fatty, right? And we were saying that.
Yeah. Particularly a good fatty.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was Ray Nelson.
Yeah, Ray Faraday Nelson. He's a local science fiction, mostly science fiction guy. He's the basis for Roy Batty in Blade Runner. If you've seen Blade Runner,
Which we found out later after playing a game with him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but yeah, I kind of knew him, and he the Philip K. Dick, and that Blade Runner is based on Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, and apparently Philip K. Dick was having an affair with Ray's wife at one point, and he was afraid that Ray was going to kill him, and that impulse, the creative impulse, turned into Roy Batty. Yeah. And Ray was very, very good. You could just see from the photos in the display that
he was a good character.
Yeah, he's like a silent actor, which is kind of what he's supposed to be.
Yeah. He was like a Mensa guy. He was a really big guy. He was really super tall and also very, very big. And extremely quick-witted, and so he made a perfect fatty because the characters would play off of one another. So the first level of characters were you could decide what was going to happen. The way it was set up, you could actually drive the story by setting up a meeting across town, like we set up a meeting at this bar, and then everybody would show up. The detectives would try to figure out where we were going. I was one of the lead gangsters, and they tried to find out where we were going. I kidnapped one of the defense witnesses, or one of the prosecution witnesses rather. And so these other characters have a second tier of people who were interested in the second tier, were interested in detective fiction and knew a little bit about it. Maybe they spent a day or two thinking about their character, but they were more involved and they could run the story or change things in the story. The third tier we called the hats. And I remember Charlie Oldham, who was quite witty, saying he'd turn around, there's a sea of hats following him, because they're all the people who showed up on the day of the event, didn't really know what to do, but they were wearing hats. And so he dispatched them to do things in the course of the event. And so you could miss the action, you could miss what was going on or not. We had a gunfight, we had a near gunfight, we had plastic guns, right? We had a near gunfight on Geary Street, I remember, and we were pulled over by the actual police.
Yeah, you were having a dark gunfight in front of Fritz and Margot's apartment house.
Right, on Geary Street. And we're later pulled over by the police, who had us like line up against a wall. And we're dressed up like in zoot suits, pinstripe suits with hats. And it was a bunch of rookie cops, and the incident commander was Luetta Columbano, because we interviewed her later. She was one of the second woman in the San Francisco Police Department. She had a bunch of rookie cops, and they had us lined up against the wall. And I remember I had a cigar in my mouth, and one of the rookies pulls the cigar out of my mouth and throws it on the ground and says, "Yeah, I don't need that." And she says, "Come on, calm down. They're not dangerous. Like, leave them alone." And so, and they pat us down and arrested. And I remember she said to me, she said, "Look, you guys can't run around in the Tenderloin with guns, okay? You have to go somewhere else."
And that is a major factor in doing these things. It's like, okay, where are you going to do them? Again, time, place. That was a great time. The cops were really great in San Francisco, I think, overall. Had a few assholes, but most of them were pretty good.
Yeah, they pulled us over a lot, actually, because sneaking into abandoned buildings at that time, we would get captured by the cops on occasion. And because abandoned buildings, people don't care that much. It's technically illegal to be in an abandoned building. It's actually illegal to be in an abandoned building if it's owned by somebody else. But since they're just low-level criminal activity, the cops would, if they catch like 26 people in animal costumes in an abandoned building, and you're not really tearing the place down or burning or like killing somebody or whatever, they're just kind of like, "Get the fuck out of here! What are you doing? Get out of here!" And that happened to us a lot. That would do us a lot.
More than you might think. Well, also, in terms of something John just said, in terms of the event being staged and starting to roll and some variety, the reason John Jacobs got that spread, he was thinking about it, and he thought, should I go with the cops, with the Continental Op and Nick Charles, or should I go with the criminals? So I bet you the criminals will be a lot more fun. And so therefore, that's why you got the really good story. Randy Schultz just went with
He was following Charlie Oldham around, who was playing Nick Charles, who was the head of the good guys.
And Randy apparently did write it up, or may have written it up. He was hired by some weird
magazine or something.
Yeah, but in the Philippines or something. It was some weird, like AP or something. And I've never, whatever he did.
Airline magazine, maybe, because they bought weird stories like that at the time.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I've never seen what he did, but I think that would be it. And if you don't know Randy Schultz, did I already mention he did And the Band Played On?
Yeah, he's the author that wrote And the Band Played On.
Yeah, about the AIDS epidemic. So he became, I think,
pretty
really
famous.
good. Yeah, really
he was a
good.
nice guy. He was doing his best to follow the action. But Jacobs really stuck with it. He played a character. What he did is he went to the Examiner files. He pulled out the Examiner stories from the 20s about Fatty Arbuckle, and he researched them. And this is the writer who was covering this event, who played a character. And he chose to play a character of Johnny Jacobs, ace reporter for the Daily Call, which was the Examiner's main rival at that time in the 20s. So, and he dug out all these yellow journal. And the Examiner was known, William Randolph Hearst, as a yellow journalism rag. I mean, it is known now. And they would, they really laid this stuff on and made up a lot of stuff. They're kind of the National Enquirer at the time, very popular paper, hugely powerful. I mean, he had the input on wars and things like that, Hearst did. And so he dug out their files and realized that they really tried to smear Arbuckle. I mean, there was no objectivity about the reporting at all. And he put this in the Examiner now, basically hypercritical historical review of the coverage that they've done of this actual event. This gets really meta here, where he's covering this stuff and writing about it as a reporter from the opposing newspaper, and then exposing the Examiner as a yellow journalism rag in the Examiner. So it's really that's why I put it on the wall. It's like a great example of any number of things. But
and by the way, they did make a movie about Hearst. I think it was called Citizen Kane. if you like movies.
Yeah, that's true. So, let's see, what else? I mean, what do you guys want us to talk about? We were talking about the Suicide Club. That's what we were involved in. Don's been doing the walking tour for many, many years. Live action role playing. Live action role playings are really big right now. I mean, for whatever it's worth, especially in Europe, of all places. I was in a castle in Poland a little while ago with an event that was put on by L.A.R.Pers. That was pretty interesting. So these things, these types of events that we were doing in the Suicide Club, we didn't invent them. Like, we didn't invent altering billboards or improving billboards. We didn't invent doing live action role playing games. They're probably doing them in ancient. I'm sure they're doing them in ancient Rome. Who knows? In Greece.
Yeah, they call them orgies.
Yeah, but and so they're happening right now. And the thing is, people always talk about, well, it's great, we did this stuff in the past, and it must have been really fun. Stuff's happening right now, and that's the important thing to me, is how to move that forward and keep it fresh. And there are young people doing these things now, and they're just they're not telling us about it too much, but they're pretty involved. So we're going to take some questions here now, or
I have something I can chime in on.
what's that?
So I have something I can chime in on. My name's Michael Nancy.
Yeah.
I live over on Alcatraz in Oakland here. And this last Christmas, our neighbor, stay with me here, just wait till the end, okay? Our neighbor came over and he was devastated because his son was in jail. And his name was Xander Fisher. And he is,
Yeah.
he
Wait a
has
second.
followed in your tradition. He's a photographer.
Xander Fisher was
Yeah.
doing, okay.
And he goes in, he's mainly in Chicago, but he grew up here. In
He's an Urbex guy, right?
Yeah, and he got
Urban
busted.
exploration kid.
He got busted in the Alameda Tube.
Oh,
Remember that?
yeah.
And then you went, I think you went and saw him in jail at the
I
San
thought you
Diego.
were having an operation.
no, I didn't go see him, but I heard about that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So yeah, there are consequences to breaking the law.
But my point is,
That's-
I didn't even know that Xander knew you and was part of this whole thing. And then here he was, following in this whole tradition. It's just very cool.
Okay.
The whole connection. And I think he's in his 20s.
So I'm responsible for the 20-year-old following the
Exactly,
tradition, going
yeah.
to jail. Okay, I'm down with that. We'll bail him out.
I'll get you in a second. What was I thinking of? Oh, the sort of unintended consequences. I'm going to let you go now. Lost my thought. Here.
Have that. I've always been curious about the olfactory aspect of sewer tours. How do you deal with the stench? And methane is toxic.
Okay, well, I can answer that. Okay, first off, most of the quote-unquote sewers that we would go into are actually storm drainage tunnels. That means there's street runoff.
Yeah, they're much cleaner.
That's right. And some systems, like the San Francisco system, not the Oakland system, but the San Francisco system, is a conjoined system, which means that if it rains a lot, both of the systems, the sewer system and the storm drainage system, are combined, and they meet up at certain points. So if it rains a lot, all of the water goes into the same containment, tunnels that are miles long, and it backs up until it's processed in the sewage treatment plants. If it rains too much, we still have emergency overflows directly into the bay and directly into the ocean from the San Francisco sewer system. So if it rains for like a month straight, raw sewage goes right into the water, just like it has forever. And this is with a new system that they rebuilt, the federal government mandated to be rebuilt back in the 80s. So sewers, there are people going, I've been in a lot of sewers, some older sewers, it just depends. There are newer sewer containment systems that they flush out. Once in a while, you'll be in like a 19-foot diameter tunnel, and if you're in it at the wrong time, you will be under 19 feet of water and in the middle of the ground, like 80 feet underground. So you have to be aware. I'm not encouraging people to do this stuff unless they research it a little bit and know what they're doing. There are consequences to your actions. And the Suicide Club, actually, this brings up a good point. We try to become very knowledgeable about what the risks were that we were taking. And
Eventually.
it took a while, yeah. A lot of mistakes. But that was the idea. It's like you're agreeing as a group of adults to go do something really stupid. You should know what it is and understand it. There was a different just general concepts that we came up with, like the rule of two, which is if you're doing one stupid thing, don't do a second stupid thing. In other words, if you're sneaking into a place you're not supposed to be in, and that's illegal or illicit, don't be drunk or have alcohol or drugs. Don't do two stupid things at once. Very important. And it served us well over time. But we learned everything by trial and error, and we had a lot of stuff blow up in our faces a lot.
Yeah, let me get this. We got another question. Let me get this one in real fast. In terms of, I think you didn't do drawbridge, did you?
No, I missed the first draw.
Yeah, John went on a 3-month hitchhiking around America thing. After about 3 months of the Suicide Club, then he was gone, and there were all these events happening. And
I missed some good ones.
Yeah. Drawbridge, if you don't know, it's this little ghost town out in the middle of the swamps near Alviso. There's like a train track that goes through, and there's a few, I don't even know if they're still there or not, a few rotting buildings. Yeah. And from salt mining, back in, historically, the residue of these old buildings. And so we did a trip out there, and we walked along the railroad track at night. And
no road to the place, only a railroad grade, and you get there by boat.
Yeah. And so we walk along the railroad track for however many miles it is, and then suddenly, off in the distance, we see a little white light. And we think, oh man! And we're all standing there on the railroad track, and we figure it's like somebody, like Porky Pig or somebody on one of those little things, going like this.
Hand train car.
Coming out to tell us to get lost. And we figure, okay, God.
We're busted.
Yeah, that's about it. So we figure, well, let's get out of the way. A guy comes up, we don't want to be intimidating, so we all move off the main railroad track, and then suddenly there's this huge fucking freight train going right past us. And Gary Warren was there, and his comment was, "Did you see that?" I was like, yeah, we almost all got killed. which didn't bother me too much, but there were some people on that particular excursion who never came back. And no.
Never came back.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
That's another thing, because it wasn't for everybody. And I noticed with the Cacophony Society later, we'd have a meeting. It was a little bit more formal and a little bit more above ground and kind of a kinder, gentler Suicide Club. But we'd have meetings, and people would come to the meetings, and actually because they'd read about it in the paper or something, so I thought, this is a cool thing, I'm going to go do it. And then they'd show up at the meeting, and they'd go on one event, and they'd just run away screaming. Like half the people were like mortified by it. Like, you people are nuts, what are you doing? And then like one person would hang around, and I still know that one person, who came for a particular event. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, I remember what I was going to say earlier. it probably still fits in. It's like Louise gets to be in the Suicide Club, or John gets to be in the Suicide Club because Ron is here.
Oh yeah, Ron. Yeah, that's right.
But at any rate, not everybody got to be in the Suicide Club. If you guys know, probably all know Michael, Burning Man, and whatever Michael's doing now, Double Michael. And he was in L.A. or somewhere down there, and he heard about the Suicide Club, and he said he came up, and he said, I looked and looked and looked for the Suicide Club. I couldn't find it.
Free internet.
Yeah, free internet.
There are groups right now, as I mentioned earlier, doing urban exploration all around. They have conventions. There's a convention every year in Minneapolis, St. Paul. There's one in Vienna, and hundreds of people from all over the world show up, and you will not find anything about these group meetings online anywhere. And they explore tunnels and climb into buildings and go into and climb urban infrastructure. And I've been to a couple of these conventions, and it's this huge community of people, and urban infrastructure is super important to understand and know about, because if you don't understand how electricity comes to you, how the water system works, how all this stuff works, I mean, it's just really, you don't understand how your world works. You don't understand how, and if things stop working, you don't understand what's going on. And I think you're much more liable to survive in difficult times if you understand your infrastructure. So urban exploration is a really great field, because often, especially with abandoned buildings, large abandoned buildings like industrial edifices, the urbex photographers are often the only record, or certainly the last record, of a lot of these amazing buildings. And there's so many things that come together that come to a confluence in the buildings. There's the history of the building itself as a utilitarian structure. There's the history of the people who worked there. There's the history of the corporation that initiated this thing. There's the abandonment of the building and all of the history that goes along with that. Why did the economy change? Why did Ford Motor Company leave here and leave this abandoned building? And then there's the building itself being taken back by nature, which to me is fascinating. I'm really fascinated by that. You know, these human structures completely being taken back by nature. And so you have all these different elements in it that make it almost a mystical thing.
Oh, yeah. Or another way to look at it as art. You can look at it, you're going into a giant Gothic industrial cathedral and playing around, crawling.
And we did it in apandoned breweries in town. There were 3 major abandoned breweries that we used to play in. Abandoned boats that were docked in the docks temporarily, that were abandoned, that were going to be stripped. Like I say, learning about the infrastructure is quite an important thing in certain ways. I mean, just knowing where to jump into in case there's in case we get into a situation where we're bombed or something, or we're being attacked. I mean, you might survive if you know the urban infrastructure. We're going to take some more questions. David?
Yeah, I'm curious about the kind of post-counterculture attraction of noir and pulp fiction, and how pulp fiction becomes this kind of attraction combined with things like Stalker and films like that, and how this kind of dark, kind of secret dimension comes in.
You want to repeat that, Mike? That's a really good question.
Yeah, I'm interested when you and I talked with Carrie, rest in peace, about the origins of Burning Man, the sort of zone trip number 4, and her inspiration came from watching Stalker, Tchaikovsky, and the whole idea of the zone. The zone itself as being this sort of interstitial realm where people's desires appear to be there, but they're not quite available. Kind of like, apparently, the Russian government has based a lot of its current, bait and switch regime on this kind of logic from that sci-fi period. In fact, it's like an official policy. They basically back everybody, opponents, supporters, you name it. Adam Curtis talked about this in Hypernormalization. Anyway, I get to the point. The film noir dimension, or the pulp fiction dimension, the post, how do you relate that within Suicide Club to, perhaps a response to the counterculture, sort of post-utopian?
Oh yeah, I'll try this one.
Yeah.
This is a big question. I think the whole noir deal, hats, trench coats, detectives, criminals, this and that kid, who's this kid, all kinds of kids. They're at this point, and probably forever, part of the culture, just baseline culture. It's not, doesn't mean everybody's going around dressed in hats and trench coats, but filmically, it keeps coming back quite a bit, and I don't think that it'll ever go away. Whereas cowboys at one point were just commonplace, but they don't really. I guess unless you're in Texas or something, they don't really translate to the urban landscape. So you get a lot of that same sort of thing with cops and robbers, the cowboys and Indians, that kind of mythos in your mind.
There's similarities between them, though. The lone guy out there doing this.
Well, yeah, or the lone gang of detectives doing anything. But yeah, I don't know if it's something. See, some people might do it, like stage one of these things, and have a lot of that stuff in mind. And I had more of it in mind than some people. I'll do. Gary Warren came on the first one. I think that's the only one he did.
The first detective, yeah.
Yeah, the Mr. Big's knockover. And we had a little thing in the paper where it announced, be it peer whatever, it's something, in the personal ads. And so in the course of the game, you would get the paper and you'd have to figure it out. But Gary, every morning, he got the paper and read the personal ads, just to see what they were. And so he comes on the event, and he's got a hat and a trench coat of sorts on, and he's, moping around, following along and doing the stuff and going through everything. And after it was over, I think it was maybe the next day, he told me, he said, "Oh yeah, I'd like to give you some critiques of your game." And I said, "Well, no thanks. You weren't playing. You was just walking around, because
He didn't get engaged in the game.
Yeah, he didn't engage, and not to say that everybody could or can, but there's that thing, and then another, kind of like a killer thing is the sea of hats.
Right.
If you have so many people, and you just turn around, and there's like 20 or 30 people who are just, they're hopefully having fun, but your game is kind of crippled.
Well, they're engaged in a lower level. That's why I said there are the three different tiers of characters.
Oh yeah, there's tiers
And
of
there's
characters.
a lot of
but you're
involvement for the
actually-
people who really put more energy into the
Well,
game.
yeah, but they're up here on this tier.
Yeah.
It's like the sea of hats. It's like,
But there were a couple people that started out on the lower level of interest who actually did become more involved in the game as it went on.
I'm not saying
So it
you're
wasn't
stuck
impossible.
there.
It
You're
was kind of
stuck
up
there.
to it was kind of up to your own initiative.
Yeah.
How much you could get involved.
But I think if you were doing one now, it would really help if you had, like an abandoned warehouse or something as opposed to real city streets. Another thing we mentioned are plastic dart guns that we used to use for our fights. And the problem with those, it's like, these are just little plastic darts. And I shot Gary a really great shot in a Piedmont Cemetery in Oakland. Shot him, and he was so far away. He
Didn't feel it, yeah.
He didn't feel it.
Yeah.
So obviously,
Mechanics.
paintball. That whole thing is if you like
Better.
that aspect of that kind of thing, people have figured out how to do it. And
But
that-
my white three-piece pinstripe suit and paintball do not go together.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another one. Yeah, John sent me some questions to think about, and and we just did some, things that go wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Can go wrong. Red Hot Pepper did this one event. I can't remember what it's called offhand, but
Day the Earth ended or something like that.
maybe. But it was the one in the hotels, like
Okay.
yeah,
Right.
Hyatt Regency, and we're all messing around.
We were dressed up nicely, and we'd go into the hotels and play a game without trying to get busted by security in the hotels.
Yeah, and we didn't really fit in for the most part because most people didn't have that great of clothes. But he wanted us to dress up as nice as possible. So Nina Feldman, she got like a mink stole or something that she had from her grandmother, and she's wearing that and a nice dress. And so, all these events try to build up to something. And we were out messing around and we found where Pepper had hidden his stash of
Shaving cream?
shaving cream or cream, you know, all the bottles, so there'd be a big pie fight shaving.
In the
cream.
hotel?
No, outside,
Oh.
it's outside. But Nina says, I'm not, you know, gonna have my meat stole, you know? So we destroyed all the stuff.
Yeah,
And
you have to work through these things.
yeah, and so I helped Nina. I think there were other people there. We just got rid of all of it. And Pepper came up. He was really pissed. But it's like you say, you don't want your three-piece white suit, you know.
Which is why you got to figure out the rules beforehand. And like, you know, when we first started doing these games, we didn't know what we were doing. And we developed ideas and concepts that, you know, made them an easier or a more successful event or game. I mean, sometimes they definitely.
Yeah, but there are things that, you know, don't work or things you want to do. We did with Brian Doohan. I did a co-did a game with him, a World War II sort of thing. We were in various places, and we were in what is now Moscone North. And I don't know how long you guys
Abandoned lots at the time,
Yeah,
just totally destroyed.
Yeah, it was sub-basements, you know, just, you know, dug out under the earth, and lots,
Where they
not
torn
as
down.
much as now, but lots of homeless people living there. And you were shot, you know, with a dart gun. You're supposed to lay there for 5 minutes and then return to your, you know, Germany or whatever. And Shelley Fern got shot, and she said, you know, I don't want to lay down here for 5 minutes. You know,
Pretty dangerous place.
Yeah, come with us.
Oh.
And we had our again, the end point where you have the climactic thing happen, so you know it's over. And it was in an abandoned lot. What is it, on the northwest corner of Pine and Kearney, where there's now a new, new building there. That was a
great spot.
Yeah, abandoned lot for decades.
Right in the middle of the financial district.
Yeah, right across from Bank of America. And so we send Ben Friedman, who's fairly young, like 8 or something, out. He's supposed to do some crawling.
Yeah, we
along
use
the
children
ledge.
in these games.
There's a lot down there. And he gets out there, and then he freezes up. And there's a man and a woman and their dog who are living in under the sidewalk. And the guy's going, "You're freaking us out, man! You're freaking! What are you doing? What are you doing? You're freaking us out!" The woman's hysterical. He was hysterical. She was more hysterical. And I had to go out. And Ben is kind of frozen because, you know, people are screaming at him. He has no idea they're under there.
We had his back.
Yeah, I went out.
So another one of those that was really, you bring up a good point, where you interact with the actual real world, you know, people in the real world. They don't know what's going on. We were playing a game called Play Dead in the Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland, which is an astonishing cemetery filled with these giant crypts, and really beautiful, beautiful place. And the way you play the game is Steve Mobia's game, who's one of the main organizers in the group. And we put on a white face, wearing all black clothes with black watch caps, and we have a little like black opera mask in our pocket. Anyway, we played this game. So you're basically running around the cemetery with white face and black clothes like a ghost, sneaking around and trying to sneak up behind people and grab their shoulder to kill them. And there's about 50 of us in the cemetery, creeping around behind these headstones. And at one point I remember, you're not supposed to talk, you're not supposed to run. There's certain rules, right? And I look over and I see these two people, I want to go kill them, and I'm sneaking up on them. And there's something wrong about them. I don't know what it was. I look at them, and I'm not supposed to talk. Right? And I look at them, and I go, and I'm creeping up, and then they see me, and they like kind of jump back. And I go, are you in the game? Are you in the game? And then they look over and they see these other people creeping up behind them. No, I didn't. I said, "Are you dead yet?" That's right, because we were killing them. I said, "Are you dead yet? Are you dead yet?" And they're like, no, we're not dead yet. We're not dead. And then they see these other people creeping around the cemetery. And I'm like, oh shit, it's a game. Don't worry. And they turn around and just walk quickly away.
Yeah, there are a bunch of those. One of them, Vito Latoni, is the gangsters. You know, he had his bodyguard outside.
Oh yeah. Jake Canino, he's a character in, because people would take their characters, he's a character in a Chandler novel,
Yeah.
Jake Canino.
Yeah, so he's outside, and he's supposed to keep, you know, other game players out of the bar.
It's Specs Bar on Columbus.
Yeah, and someone comes up and they have a hat and a trench coat, and he like puts his arm out and says, "Vito says you can't go in." Oh my God! Vito says we can't go in, they turn and leave. Who knows who they were?
Yeah, and Jim, the guy was a big, scary-looking Polish dude with a hat and a violin case and a trench coat. And he's standing there at the Specs door and like not letting people come in.
They're the wrong people.
Wrong people.
Average-looking schlubs he probably would have let come in, but not somebody like that. Also in the World War II game, we're going along, and Mary Friedman with her little daughter Nellie is creeping around in on the sub-basements, you know, where the thing is, and somebody emerges and she shoots him with a dart gun. And it's some homeless guy. And she says, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I thought you were in the game." And he says, "We're all in the game."
Question right back here.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there was an event where things sort of spun out and went horribly awry.
Yeah, there were a few in the Suicide Club where things spun out and went horribly awry. Yeah, I'd have to say the worst one was the Naval Reserve Fleet in Suisun Bay, and we did that 2 years in a row, and we should have known better because we did it once, but we were so stupid we did it a second time. Suisun Bay, which is out past the Carquinez Straits. They had like about 12 different rows of naval ships that were mothballed there for years, for decades. And there were as many as 100, 120 ships, and they were abandoned. And they were maintained by the, you know, they were like looked at by the Navy. And so we did it on Christmas Day in 1978. Gary Warren did an event where we had gotten 6 canoes, we're putting 4 people in each canoe. Okay, and he rented them from Outdoor Adventures, which was a SF State adjunct. Anyway, we knew some people who ran it, and we rented these 6 canoes. We had 24 people, and we came up and they'd done a preliminary exploratory because we'd explore things before we do these events. We'd go and do like a pass-through just to see if we could do it, and they'd gone down there during a high tide. And I said, "Oh, there's a lot of water here. We'll just like canoe over these little channels, right?" So when we came back, it was low tide. It was 7 feet below, lower, and we had to drag these fucking canoes through. I was sinking up to mud to my thighs, and mud dragging the canoes over them. And we finally got out to the open water, and then we went to we canoed out to the Naval Reserve Fleet where we had a potluck dinner and explored all these boats. It was amazing, a wonderful environment. David Warren, who was an amazing guy, wonderful guy, co-founder of the club, was a stone alcoholic, and he'd be sober for like months and months, and then he'd go off the wagon for a bit. He got shit-faced drunk. He was lying in the bottom of one of these canoes, so we had to deal with him. And then we got up there, and we made it back. And then we decided we're going to do it again next year. And Gary thought, well, we had these canoes, that was dumb. Let's get rafts. So he got some rafts, but he got cheap rafts because we were broke. We didn't have any money. So we had these chintzy rafts. So we go out there, and once again, we have about 20, 30 people, I think, in rafts. And the rafts are crappy, and there's a storm brewing. And the bay, even though it's Suisun Bay and it's way the hell inland, it's a big body of water, and you get white caps if you get enough wind. So by the time we got to the boats themselves, to these giant naval ships, the water was white capping, and we thought we were going to die, literally. I mean, we were trying to take water in these boats. We were all soaking wet. And there's a giant fucking storm, right? We get on the boats, and we're up there, and I remember Dan Spear was the only guy who had any medical training whatsoever. He said, "We're all going to get hypothermia if we don't do something." And so, so we literally, and this wailing, this horrible storm, and these boats are giant, right? They're huge. And so Gary and we realized if we don't do something, people are going to get hypothermia and possibly be really ill or die. So we're trying to figure out, and we decided to turn ourselves in. We're going to turn ourselves in, and we knew that there were a guard boat that went around the boats. So we tried to wave them down, but it's a giant storm. We can't see anything. So we ran all the way down these gangplanks in between the boats, from one boat to the next. There's gangplanks between them, looking around, and we finally found a small cabin cruiser that was hiding out from the storm in the lee of these boats. So he's down in this still water between, because it's stormy out there, and we're literally yelling at them. We're like 50, 60 feet above him, and we're yelling at him at the top of our lungs. And he saw us, and we're waving, and so he called in on the marine radio, called in an SOS on the marine radio, and the guys who were supposed to guard these boats, they come out in a pretty big tug, a solid tug with these massive lights that lit up everything like daylight. They light up the boats, right? And there's 24 of us or whatever. We have these dumbass rafts that are all like deflated, right? So they put us on their giant tugboat. They put us on a tugboat. They bring us back to their little shed, and they're civilian employees of the Navy. And there's two old guys. They're two retired guys. One black guy, one white guy. They clearly worked together for a million years. They're in their 60s or 70s. And they're just kind of looking at us like we're out of our minds. And then they start taking the report about what happened. And they're interviewing Gary and Adrian Burke. And they're saying, okay, well, what are you guys doing? I said, well, we're out in our rafts, right? And we're going to the Naval Reserve Fleet. And one of the rafts sprung a leak, and we all got wet. And by the time we got to the Naval Reserve Fleet, we realized we couldn't leave. And he says, okay, he's writing it. And I said, okay. So you're out in your rafts on the Suisun Bay, and your boat sprung a leak, and it was necessary that you go on to the Naval Reserve Fleet so that you didn't drown. And we're like, yeah. So that was, we were another thing, you did this too, because you worked with the rope ladder, right? Because we didn't know how to do shit. I mean, we got this stuff from the movies, right? And books, and so we wanted to climb into abandoned buildings. There were a couple of people who were naturally good climbers. I was a very good natural climber. I climbed pipes, whatever, rocks, whatever. Pierre was good. Gene Mashofsky later was a really good climber. But most people couldn't. So we figured, how do we get people in these abandoned buildings? So we had seen in like Tarzan and the Green Goddess, they had this really cool rope ladder, right? So we decided we were going to make a rope ladder. So Bob Campbell and Dave Warren and I went over to Dave Warren's house and made a rope ladder. We didn't know how to do it. We got like hemp rope and we tie a knot in it. We made Dave made these little wooden slats in his little wood shop. And we made a rope ladder that coiled up about like 5 feet diameter, weighed 90 pounds. It was ridiculous, but it would work. We'd climb up on the wall, pull it up with a little rope, tie it off, and you could climb it. So we used that for a few months until we infiltrated the National Speleological Society, and they taught us how to do vertical climbing with ropes so that we actually knew what we were doing. But that came later. Point being, we would try to do it even if we didn't know how to do it. That's the miracle of that group. It was just this expression of desire to be in the world and to do things.
Yeah, one of the photos over there, the bottom, one of the sort of angled ones, not the newspaper, to the, yeah, that's in the Kennedy Hotel, which used to exist on, kind of on the Embarcadero. That's where the Target is, and
Bullets.
Yeah, Bullets.
Yeah, it's in the film.
Oh, yeah, and by the way, with movies, if you want to see a pretty good look at the mothball fleet that went out on, Sam Peckinpah's Killer Elite. Yeah, the last sequence takes place in the mothball fleet. But we went into that, and this is when John was on his sabbatical, and so we're trying to throw a rope. Didn't have anybody who could climb up the side of the building as it seemed to exist to us. But we're trying to throw a rope up over the
railing, fire escape.
And so we pull up the rope ladder, and we finally do it. I know who's the hot dog ear. Remember?
Oh yeah, Jim Freund.
Yeah, Jim Freund.
Freund.
He's a hot dog mogul.
His grandfather invented skinless hot dogs.
Yeah. So
he was the only guy in the entire club that had any money.
Yeah. So he's throwing the metal hook thing out, and he throws it out.
Right, grappling hook.
It comes back. So I finally do it. I have worked with tree cutters some before, and we get that, and then so everybody's going up, and I nobly volunteer to go last, and not thinking it out. And right in front of me, because he's slow, Dave Warren with his gimp leg is going up. He's going up the rope ladder, and like he could fall on me at any point. And
all 260 pounds of him.
And the problem was, you're going up the rope ladder. If you don't have someone holding at the bottom, your feet are out here, and you're trying to go up that way. So that was
good thing you were 26.
Yeah, that helps. But that was. There are a lot of problems.
Well, another really good one, in the Billboard Liberation Front, the very first billboard that we did, I want to tell this story because Kathy Hardy figures in this story prominently. We were going to go and do an event that Gary Warren and Adrian Burke had organized. They didn't tell us what it was. It's called Enter the Unknown. What that means is Enter the Unknown. You go on the event not knowing what you're going to do. You know what's expected of you. You're expected to bring a certain type of clothing, boots, flashlight, whatever, gloves. You're told what to bring, but they don't tell you what you're going to do. What they did is they brought us to Division and 13th Street at Mission, And we were going to, and Gary had asked me earlier, said, would you climb up on a building for us? I'm like, sure, I didn't know where it was, I didn't know. I said, sure, I'll climb up on the building. So I'm there, I don't know what it is, I'm blindfolded along with everybody else, we're brought there blindfolded. They take the blindfolds off, and then I climb the wall, and then we pull up the dumbass rope ladder, and tie it off, and then all 26 of us, because there were 26, climb up on the roof of a warehouse, which is Discount Builders, if you know that building, it's still there. And on the roof, there's a giant A-frame billboard with 2 billboards back to back on it. And we and then we get up there and like, okay, what are we doing? And Gary and Adrian say, okay, we're going to change these billboards. This is the first billboard hit that we ever did. Pre-Billboard Liberation Front, inspired the Billboard Liberation Front. And so we're all up there, and 26 people, and we don't, and we vote on what to change the captions to, right? And there's 2 billboards, so it takes like hours, and we're arguing, like, that's stupid, no, that's better, I don't want to do this. And so we ended up kind of coming up with 2 different captions. They had paper and all the glue and all this stuff, and so we made the paste overs, and there's actually a video of it on one of these video players here. It's David Warren, Super 8 film of the Max Factor billboard the next day, showing what we had done, and it's pretty cool. And so we're up there on the roof doing this, and it takes all night. It's just retarded. And finally we do it. We finish the billboard. It's like 3 in the morning, and the spotlight hits above us, and we're like, oh shit! And we look down. There's like cop cars everywhere. There's like 5 cop cars.
You have to get Kathy climbing the roof.
Oh yeah, it gets better. So Kathy, is not a climber, but this is the thing about suicide club. We're encouraged almost in a cultic sense to do these things. And so she's like, okay, I'll climb the ladder. She didn't really want to do it. She climbed the ladder. Pierre and I are helping her as much as we can. She gets up on the top, and she's vastly relieved at being on the roof. Oh my God, I made it. And then I'm thinking, and she's thinking, like, how the fuck am I going to get down this thing? And so then we get busted. The cops show up. They surround the building. The cops can't get on the roof of the building because they don't have a dumbass rope ladder like we do, right? So they got to call the fire department to get a fire ladder truck out. So this is taking a lot of time, right? And we're just watching. There's a parapet wall, and we're peeking over the parapet wall. They don't know who's on the roof, right? They have no idea. Nobody's communicated with them. We watched the ladder truck comes up, and then these 3 cops come up with their guns drawn. And Gary had devised this theory about dealing with the police, and that was like, you don't give them any trouble, don't hassle them, don't frighten them, because when cops are coming into a situation like that, they don't know what's going on. They're afraid they're going to be killed. They're really gun happy. They're really afraid. So we had all 26 of us sitting on the ground with our hands like in clear sight when the cops came. It's men and women. It's like a mixed group, probably like 16 guys and like 10 women or whatever. And we're there. And oh, that's right. I was in a gorilla costume, right? Oh. And I'm the 19-year-old kid, right? And Gary always brought along his animal costume. He said, "So here, you better put the gorilla costume on. The cops are coming." So I put it on. And the cops are there, and they're like the guns drawn. They see like 26 people kind of sitting and go, hi, and they're like, what the fuck are you? And the gorilla, what are you doing? So and they hadn't even seen the billboard. They didn't know that we altered the billboard. They had gotten a call that there was a burglary in the building. Okay, and that's what they were there for. So they're expecting to find some burglars, right? And they're just trying to process, like, what's going on? So they didn't want to arrest us, right? When they found they knew it was a bullshit charge that was going to get thrown out. They'd have to do paperwork for 26 people, which would take 5 days, and it would get thrown out. They knew it, and we were nice to them. We were super friendly. We're like, hey guys, billboard, I like our billboard, and so it was a really sexist billboard. You have to look at it on the video. I think there's a photo of it over there somewhere. But it was a Max Factor billboard, warning of pretty faces and safe in the city. Fight back with self-defense. The new moisturizer by Max Factor. We changed one side to say self-respect, which is kind of concrete. I didn't care for that one. We changed the billboard on the other side to say warning: a pretty face isn't safe in the city. Fight back with self-abuse. The new mutilator, Axe Factor, which I thought was pretty funny. So that was what we came up with this great democratic San Francisco process. And so the cops are like, by this time we're kind of chumming up with the cops, we're talking to them, and Adrian Burke is talking to this one lady cop, one of the few female cops at the time, and the cop looks at her and she goes, the first time I saw this billboard, I knew somebody was going to do something to it. Wow. This is the cop saying this, right? So then we're going down the ladder, and the ladder truck, so we're filing down the ladder, and the cops on the ground don't really know how many people are on the roof or what's going on. They don't know what it is. They still think it's a burglary call, right? So one after another, after another, after another. It's like a fucking clown car, right? People keep coming down the ladder. And so then Kathy gets on the ladder, and she's not happy. She's like kind of not happy with it. You can tell she's kind of taking her time, really slow. And I'm trying to help her, but I'm still dressed up as a gorilla. So there's 2 young cops at the base of the ladder, and they look up, and one of them's kind of a weird angle, and he can't really see me. And one of the cops looks up and he sees me and he goes, "Hey, you gorilla, get down off of that ladder," like kind of sharp. And the other dude looks up, doesn't see me, sees Kathy, and he kind of hits his butt. He goes, "Man, can't you see she's really afraid? Give her a break." So, and then we got down on the ground. Dave Warren was hamming it up. He was wearing a suit, and he had his gimp leg and his little cane. And by that time, this guy, who was an ambulance-chasing journalist who had a police radio, kind of like a Ouija guy, shows up with a camera. And so Dave was told he saw the camera, so he starts hamming it up for the camera. He's an older guy dressed conservative, like, "Oh my God, my family, I don't believe it. I'm ruined, I'm ruined." While he's being frisked, leaning up against the wall by the cops. So it was just a shit show. It was hilarious. They took us in vans to the Mission Precinct, or they booked us. They didn't want to book us, but the property owner insisted. Foster and Kleiser Company, they got a hold of an exec, woke him up at night at Foster and Kleiser Company, said, "Hey, we got 26 people fucked your billboard up," and he goes, "I want them arrested." And the cops were like, "Okay, we'll arrest them." So they booked us. We got thrown out later, totally thrown out, and that was that. That was the Max Factor 26. So, Kathy was going to say. Oh, right. They agreed to drop the charges.
I wrote the letter.
Ah, yeah.
I didn't want to apologize to them.
So Kathy wouldn't apologize to him, but we paid for the expenses of cleaning up the billboard.
I apologized for the laborers.
Yeah, to the labor. That's right. And that became a thing in the Billboard Liberation Front, because when we would alter billboards in the BLF, we would do it in a way that didn't damage the underlying billboard. We'd do paste overs, and we'd leave a little note for the sign men that would have said, being a sign man myself, as a professional courtesy, leave a little note for them saying, "Hey, this is how you take this stuff off to make the billboard go back to normal," and we'd leave a 6-pack of beer for them, right? And then over the years, because we did the BLF for 34 years, as we got older and had a little bit more money, we'd start leaving a bottle of really good single malt whiskey for them. So those guys really liked us. So, question in the back?
Yes, I have a kind of a logistical question about urban exploration. So when you were exploring the sewers and exploring these abandoned buildings and ships, how much research did you have to put into in order to find these places and make sure that you weren't going to get, drowned by sewer water or automatically caught by the cops?
How much research? It would depend. The storm tunnels around here, you're not going to get caught and drown unless it's raining like crazy, and it has to really be raining for a while. So we just wouldn't go in them. Even at that time, I think we understood that. We do nowadays. That's a question for now, because I do more extreme urban exploring now. I take that back. When we climbed the Golden Gate Bridge, we did stuff like that. So we had to know about what we were doing. We learned about it by exploring. The first time I climbed the Golden Gate Bridge was with Peter Field, and we didn't know. We went out, we climbed out from Lion Point in Marin on the undercarriage of the Golden Gate Bridge to the tower, and we got to the tower, and that was all we did that night. But that was a big deal, because we got there and we realized you could get out there, and then we came back the next week and started looking for ways to get inside the tower, and we eventually did. So nowadays, research, some of the Urbex guys now, they do insane research. I can't say when, where, or how, but I know of people who will watch the guards in a place with binoculars from a quarter mile away to get the codes to turn the alarms off. Okay, and I didn't say that. Jim Mason?
Hey, John. This John Jacobs article is fantastic.
Well, thank you. That's why it's on the wall.
I know the voiceover is amazing.
Yeah, it's the best thing he ever wrote. And at the time that he wrote that, there's a funny story attached to that, which, correct me if I'm wrong, John, but... Oh, shit. He did. He was recruited by the editor to write that story, because the editor knew that he liked detective fiction, and he was like a low man on the totem pole kind of guy at the time, new journalist, and he really got into it. Like, he was one of the best characters in the game.
Yeah.
How did you meet John? How was that? Do you remember recruiting him, or?
No, like I say, he showed up, called me, and he said he'd heard about the game, wanted to cover it, and I figured, okay, yeah, why not? We got Randy Schultz covering it for whatever he's covering it for. Have another guy. Can't be all bad. But him following his nose is what led to the article. So.
Good journalist.
Yeah, very good.
Everyone should read it. So, a variety of reputable publications like the Morning Call and the Examiner at one point or another suggested that the white van was very important as an object and piece of transport for these various adventures. So I'm curious to hear about some of the white vans that you've known and loved over these several decades of activity.
White vans? You mean like vehicles?
White vans. John, the white van, the vehicle is invisible.
I'm not sure what you're referring to, Jim.
John, for multiple decades, you've driven a white.
Well, yes, I'm driven white vans.
Oh, you're talking about the food van.
No, the white van.
The food van.
Are you talking about it in some sort of cryptic symbolic essence here?
It's a utility vehicle.
Right.
Ubiquitous on the streets.
Yes.
It is not seen.
You mean the serial killer van, is what you're talking about
A
here?
van that you have driven for
Well, I've had
decades.
many vans. I've driven like
Yeah,
a
drives-
dozen vans.
He's driven the food van.
Oh, yeah, food. It was Ford, but they changed it to food by taking the letter out, putting an O instead of an R. But anyway,
Yeah.
no, I've had white vans since 1992 when Chris Radcliffe and I started Central Sign Services, and we needed vehicles, and we bought white vans from Steve Smith in Montero Beach at Smith Trucks. And we'd show up in a van and had all the stuff that we needed to do whatever we're doing, hopefully.
Suicide Club days, the only kind of van we had was Bob Campbell's VW Bug.
Right.
Yeah, everything
We
else
were
were
really
crappy
poor.
cars. Yeah, a few cars.
Yeah, very few people had cars. We took a lot of the stuff we did, we took public transportation in the Suicide Club. I know that's hard to believe, but it's true. There were very few people that had cars. You know, like there are a couple of people who had big, crappy old vans that we'd roll into. At one point, 8 of us or 6 of us, I forget, chipped in $50 a piece and bought a 1963 Pontiac hearse. So the Suicide Club collectively owned a hearse for a while. And Dave Warren had these funeral bumper stickers, which he changed them to say, "Let's put the fun back in funeral." So we'd show up in this giant ass, you know, like 63 Pontiac hearse with about 12 people in animal costumes in it. But when Jason Wechter ran for city supervisor as Carl LaFong, the W.C. Fields character in 1978, I think it was, we would go out and we would assault the opposing political characters, like Paul Pelosi, Nancy's cousin or brother or something, was running for supervisor in District 11, and so we would show up in the Suicide Club hearse, and all these animals would roll out with protest signs that had Mobius strips on them and question marks. And Jason would try, under the name of the character Carl LaFong, would try to debate Paul Pelosi about why he wasn't providing pastrami sandwiches for his constituents. And I remember his platform was that he would mount two fans on Twin Peaks to blow the fog out of the inner sunset, ban the playing of disco music within 500 feet of all living creatures, including plants. And we didn't like disco. I like disco now, but back then, you know, it was, if you're a certain age, you were either punk or disco. Anyway, so, and he also said he would wear a rabbit costume to all the Board of Supervisors meetings, and he would provide pastrami sandwiches for everybody in his district because he was from Brooklyn and people needed to have pastrami. Anyway, that's one of an ancillary Suicide Club event that we did at that time.
Tell them about you and Judy Haight walking to the Bay Bridge. Remember that?
I don't know, which one was this, walking the...
Yeah, you guys just decided to go climb the Bay Bridge. So you walked all the way from the inner sunset. You can take it.
Yeah, we walked all the way from the inner sunset, all the way downtown, climbed the Bay Bridge, climbed back, and then...
And then you walked back.
Yeah, then we walked back in one night. So it literally walked like 10 miles and climbed the bridge and then walked back, having a philosophical conversation. David?
Is there a camera obscura in the Bay Bridge?
Is there a camera obscura in the Bay Bridge? If there is, I do not know it. However, the camera obscura at the Cliff House was restored and managed by David T. Warren, co-founder of the Suicide Club, and Chris DeMonterey, starting in 1977, and they managed it for 20 years, and they put in the holograms, they totally restored it, and David ran it for a long time, and then in one of his alcoholic binges 25 years later, he threatened to beat up the Golden Gate National Park recreation area representative, and they took it away from him finally. But we did the events in there and hung out there. It was a great place, so it was kind of a Suicide Club node. So
There's reputed to be a camera obscura inside one of the towers.
In the new tower?
No, in the old structure.
I've never run across it. There's a central cable anchorage housing where there could be one, Up on top of the towers, I doubt it. I mean,
It's in the base of one of the towers. It's, yeah.
what's it viewing if it's a camera obscura?
It shows you the city of San Francisco upside down inside.
Well, I know what the camera obscuras do, but it would need to be up high in order to do that. You wouldn't get a very good view of it.
I don't know.
Send me the reference later. I'm curious. I don't know. I've never heard that. Any other questions, comments, insults, epithets? Here, we got one right here.
I just wonder if there was something special about the time and place between the 70s and 80s here in San Francisco, because I grew up in Chicago area, and I read about San Francisco in Rolling Stone magazine. It seemed like something was going on there, but I wasn't sure what. And maybe you can fill me in.
Was it different than Don? I mean, what do you think?
Where did it go?
Where'd it go? Well, where'd it go? Money came in. The good thing, if you haven't figured this out, with all these abandoned buildings, all the stuff we're doing, Hartman's Hospital is completely empty, tons of games in there. The city was depressed economically, and there were tons of places, like I mentioned, all these hollowed out, bases of buildings were just sub-cellars. Tons of abandoned buildings. It wasn't as cheap as in the hippie era to rent places, but you could have
Still pretty cheap.
Yeah, several people in a flat for what? I'm trying to remember, $400 a month or something.
Oh yeah. I remember $50 a month was about all I would want to pay.
Yeah, that would be one of the rooms in the flat, and I remember people I met who were here in the hippie days, and they were talking. One of these big railroad flats in a Victorian, the rent went up, and it was like $80 a month. It's like, man, how are we going to do that?
Well, there's like Ron Unger, who's in the building here, who's the guy that is responsible for me being here. At one point when I came to San Francisco in 1976, I was ready to do stuff. I came here because of the mythology of San Francisco. I knew stuff happened here and I wanted to be in it. And all the hippies I ran into were like, oh man, you missed a party. It was 8 years ago. These toothless, speed-free hippies. And so I just couldn't believe it. I had a hard time believing them after that. But within a year I was in the Suicide Club and we're doing all this stuff. And the point being, there's always something happening in the underground. It's just finding it. There's kids doing it right now. I would never tell anybody. It's great. The Suicide Club was great. The early burning, that's great. All this stuff was really great. But there's stuff happening right now all over the place, and the kids don't tell us about it because they know better.
They don't want us to know.
Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or not. Anthony?
I don't actually have a question, but I just wanted to add to that. A lot of it had to do with the fact that this was a port city. I've asked Craig Baldwin this for years because I'm like, how did all this infinite subcultural stuff happen? And obviously, there's no way to really pinpoint that, but there's a reason that this only happened in really this kind of insane subcultural activity only happened in San Francisco and New York City. And to an extent in some other cities, but I think that
It's great.
I think that's something.
But Ron and I had an apartment. I remember we finally got an apartment after I'd lived in a really crazy little place with like 10 people in a place or whatever. And we got an apartment on Nob Hill in a little dip between Nob Hill and Russian Hill, and it was $200 a month for like this 2-bedroom apartment. And we're like, wow, it's kind of expensive. I don't know, can we do that? But we both have jobs, we can pay it, And that's 1976 in like November. So, any other questions, comments? Molly?
I have a question. I'm really enjoying this. It's great, just great material, I have to say. So many things you talked about are so funny. But, and also just, I guess the crossover with cinema is really interesting.
Crossover with what?
With cinema,
Oh.
just playing out roles and conceiving of yourselves as sort of a gang of people dressed, a gang in a good sense, but just the way that movies work. And I don't know, we were looking at a lot of film noir recently, so the whole idea of these sort of, just these ludicrous chases, and I don't know, I just love the material. But the thing I want to ask is more about maybe, did you write any scripts? How did these games that you organized?
Did you write a script for your games?
What's the duration of a game, and is there a way to know? And if you participated in it, would you have any kind of we didn't have mobile phones or anything to text each other to say what was going on, right? So how did this kind of evolve in the time? Can you talk about that a little bit? Just if there is a structure, I don't know. Maybe I'm
there's a loose structure. Yeah. There's, I was thinking, again, John, brought up these questions that might come up. But like now, how could you have like something like we did with that? How could you do it now? Like I said, you really need an enclosed space. Ideally, otherwise, you're going to meet the cops. The cops probably are a little more antsy now than they were then, so you could get shot. That brings the game to an end or to life. So you got all that. So one thing that's happened is you have, I can't even remember what they're called, but basically mystery role-playing things, little mystery scenarios, mystery dinners, mystery train trips, so you're all there. And
Those are popular now, yeah.
Yeah. So that's like I'm not saying this one led to that.
But would it be in preparation for the day of the game, or like people would be invited over and there would be a conversation started?
A few people would be, but you'd mostly just, get people lined up, who you want to play.
Well, Doug communicated with all the major characters, as I recall. You talked about, and he kind of helped give us certain information. He'd give certain information to one guy he didn't give to another guy.
Right.
So
it's like you want to be, with your group, at some point you want to be here, a spot chosen to reflect. It's like when Charlie Oldham, when I pulled Charlie Oldham in, and none of these guys had ever seen him.
Right, we didn't know him.
And they, and I say, it's going to be Dashiell, it's a Dashiell Hammett thing. He's playing Hammett, he silvered up his hair, and he had the really nice clothes. And he's going to be in the Transbay Terminal. And so they're on stakeout. They're on stakeout for a long time. They're sitting around.
Wow.
It's like, I didn't know. I mean, maybe Charlie's not going to show up, right? Who can say? But when he finally does come through, it electrifies the room, and they're after him. So you have to in some way orchestrate where things are going to happen. But with like the John Jacobs story, the thing with that, we planned it, and this is again stuff that doesn't go right. And the Sea of Hats kind of concept.
Right.
We had the big shootout. This was again. There's like a big
the dock.
a big shootout. There's a big pie fight. There's a big whipped cream. There's some finale. Right. And so the big shootout. This would have been with the plastic dart guns. Was going to be on this little rotting pier over Islais Creek Channel.
Yeah.
And we were trying. This is obviously the shootout. It's really late.
We wanted to figure out how to end the game, so people knew it was done.
Yeah, it's ending the game. And we're trying to get the people to come out and shoot it out with us, and they're all looking. It's like, come on. And finally, I think one or two people came out, and the deal was that John, a.k.a. Vito, and I, a.k.a. Rocky, would get shot off the pier.
Into the water.
Down into the Islais Creek Channel. And that's finale.
They should know that the game's over since the two main bad guys are now in the water dead.
Yeah, and almost nobody saw us take the plunge into the bay because they wouldn't come out and attack us. So you got
pretty funny.
Yeah, you got these things. If you really want it to go well, then you'd have to script it more. Yeah. And scripting it more is not the same thing. So it's a dynamic.
Most people aren't improvisers. I mean, they're not.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
All right. So I guess one more question, Thomas Birchfield. Will be the last question of the night.
Yes,
from Mr. Thomas Birchfield.
Yeah, thank you. Brings back a lot of memories.
Yeah.
Some of the things I'd forgotten that we had done when I was part of it. What was your favorite event of all time?
Thomas is asking what our favorite event was.
Yeah.
Don, you want to take that?
I'll let you do it.
Well, you have a favorite one. I mean,
I do.
I don't know. Do you?
Not technically. No. I mean, not that I liked a lot better than anything else. I think for me, I have high points, and it's like I say, some of the things work, some of the things don't work. I mean, one of my ones I'm thinking about most often, the Fox initiation.
Oh yeah, Fox Theater.
The Fox Theater is completely has been abandoned for years. The seats have all been torn out. I mean, crawling under the sub-basement, guys crawling in under. When we do an exploratory, he's getting like, bubblegum wrappers from,
1940.
Yeah, and we do a thing, and it's going to be a big initiation. And the initiation itself, the place was just so great. And then the initiation was just bust in some ways.
The room was fabulous, so just being in it. And we did a couple of events in there.
Yeah, but this was the initiation, and I realized, and that's kind of like the almost the end of the Suicide Club, because you realize the people don't really want to.
They didn't get into character.
They wouldn't get into character. I had open heart surgery like a year ago, so I got this nice big scar like here, and we went to see Weird Al Yankovic a couple of times back.
In the theater?
In the Fox Theater.
Fox Theater,
all fixed up. It's really nice. They still have the big giant Buddha statues on either side of the stage, and they were there when we were there. Only it was empty and dusty. And so I did one of my characters, kind of a Renfield, White Fry sort of thing. I was going to be a maniac, but then I think John found, an axe, a big fire
axe, yeah.
in the thing. And I was like, creeping around. I was just atmosphere. It was supposed to be atmosphere.
Scaring people.
Yeah, or giving them, just that, again, that cinematic, oh yeah, it's kind of like this. And I'm creeping along with the axe, and these people come up, and they're going, had a daughter who's an infant then, and they go, "Oh, Don, how's Bridget? How's she doing?"
And he's like dressed up as a maniac with an axe.
Yeah, and then
Don was really depressed about that.
Well, ultimately, but the thing was, I have the axe, and there's one guy who came in from nowhere, a total jerk, and you remember him?
You get him once in a while.
Yeah, I think about him, but he's going, "Let's get the axe." So I have these 4 or 5 women and children and this guy, all grabbing the axe. I'm holding it up here like this, and I remember Deb Polfus saying, I remember this distinctly, and she says, "Careful, that might be a real axe." Yeah, no shit, right? And so I'm pulling, and I finally, twisted enough to wrench it out of their hands, and I turn and I start to run for it, and I thought the guy tripped me.
God.
But I realized pretty quickly probably didn't trip me, because the carpet, the carpet was all buckled up, and there was all these strands and stuff. And so at any rate, I tripped, and I went down like that. And 2 seconds maybe, I don't know what it was. But as I was going down, I look, and under me, and this is when I thought of it, there's this axe. Point, one of the edges, just right here, make a perfect, Aztec sacrificial scar. And as I'm going down, I go, "Oh shit!" And so all this happens. However fast it happens, for me, it's like slow motion, and I go, "Oh," and I just turn it, and I fall on the flat bags. Yeah, but and then we're under the basement, and there's some cut out little niche. And the people there are all lined up against I'm in the niche with the axe. And the people are lined up on the wall over there.
In costume.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 feet away, not very far, a little crawl space. And they all start singing, "We Shall Overcome," all this stuff. Finally, Jason yells at him, "You shut up!" And finally he says to him, "Shut up!" He said, "Cut off all your flashlights." So they cut off all the flashlights. And this was one of my favorite moments. Not my favorite event, but one of my favorite moments, when all these dinks are sitting over there in the dark, and I said, and I took the axe and I went whack on the concrete and under me, so it sounded like the axe, and I would go, "Oops!" really loud, and they all go, "Oh my God," and they all turn the flashlights, and the flashlights on me, and I'm sitting there with the axe, and I just laugh at them. What a bunch of morons.
So that wasn't one of the best events. It was an amazing building, though, and that's for sure. And that's like that scene in the movie, that scene in the Phantom of the Opera, the silent Phantom of the Opera with Lon Chaney, where at the very end he's being chased by all of the people of Paris down into the underground, into the sewer tunnels. And he stops at one point along this big stone barricade over the water and turns around, and he's got his hand clenched like he has a bomb in his hand. He turns around with the hand, he looks at them crazily, like holds up the end, and all 100 people go, and then he goes, "Ha!" and there's nothing in his hand at all, and they kill him.
But
One
it
of
was
the great movies.
But it was worth it.
Yeah. So, any other question? I guess that's it, huh?
John, I just want to.
Oh yeah, we got to pimp out the books. So here's V. Vale here in the back, and he has some Pranks 2 book, which have interviews with me, Julia Solis, who I'm going to be giving a talk with in a month, and Ron English, whom I'm also going to be giving a talk with. Really great books. We have the brand new Cacophony, Tales of the San Francisco Cacophony Society book, written by me, Kevin Evans, and Carrie Galbraith. The new paperback edition available. If you want to buy it, you can buy one from Grace in the back, or from V. Vale. You can get Pranks or any number of his wonderful research publications over here at the table in the back. I highly recommend that you check them out.
Well, you know, I wanted to say that thanks to that man there, I published Charles Willeford.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Don Herron turned V. Vale onto Charles Willeford, who then Vale published a Willeford piece, which was really good.
A couple of novels.
You probably published 2 of the Willeford novels. Yeah.
I preached in California.
Very good. Oh yeah.
Wild.
So, okay, there you go. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for L.A.R.P. Check out the video players over here too. You push a button and it plays video. I have 24 videos over here, and you can listen in and check them out. Just push a button. If you don't like that video, push the button again. Wait 5 seconds, and then the thing comes up, and you can choose another video.
Yeah. That was get better than that. Didn't. Get better than that. It felt like
Wow, he's got the world's smallest video recorder or something.
It's got a gimbal on it. See the gimbal?
Yeah, it looks amazing.
The thing is, like, he also does this stuff.
Good to see you.
All right.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. We'll catch up soon, yeah? I'll send you an email.
You don't understand.
Well, now, a year later, he's coming back. Oh, yeah. He's like,
I guess what my question was.
That was a good question.
My question was.
Hard to answer.
Yeah, I can see why they're answering.
Why noir after the hippies? Was it the Charlie Manson and all of that? Was it the darkness of the period? Was it the oil crisis? Was it Nixon?
It was the cool hats and suits.
Was
After
it
the hippies like running around in sandals and dumb patchouli oil and crap like that, people wanted to get,
Was it the 30s all over again? Was it the collapse of the...
Also got to realize noir never went away. I mean, you think, oh, noir, and in some ways, technically, you get to the end of the 50s, early 60s, you get to color movies, Vertigo's noir, but it's color.
It's color, yeah.
But then in France, you have neo-noir.
Because noir is about trauma. Noir is about wartime trauma. And GIs coming back all psychologically ruined.
Yeah.
So is that like post-Vietnam trauma or something like that? Is that...
Maybe. I don't think we intellectualize things to that degree at all.
Yeah.
Maybe Gary did, but I don't even think he did, really.
Yeah, some of the filmmakers might have. But on the other hand, some people think Fritz Lang's M is the first noir.
Fritz Lang, yeah.
What, 31 or something like that?
Yeah.
No,
Hey, Rum, thank you for coming by. See ya.
I mean, is it Eric Davis who's written about the different categories of subcultures and countercultures, and he makes a distinction between, say, the hippies and the freaks?
Yeah.
And like Zappa was much more the freak.
Right, he didn't like the hippies very much. He thought they were soft-headed.
Yeah, and like, you had the conservative magazines.
Yeah, his new book, High Weirdness, is out. He just came out. I went to a book signing for it, and it's a brick.
I would have thought Suicide Club fell more into the category of freak than anything.
We weren't hippies. Even Gary
There
Warren.
were a few ex-hippies.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Warren was not a hippie. He looked like a hippie. He had long hair. I had long hair at one point.
He belonged to the John Birch Society.
When he was a kid, yeah.
Who did?
Gary.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, when he was a kid, he was from Florida.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
We're trying to mess up his expectations.
No,
He
what-
expects
Let's just say
these
he
things
consider-
will
he
work
got
in
past
these
that. Let's
lives.
say, but yeah, when he was a kid, sure, he came up in a really conservative situation, and a lot of what he did, I think, was a reaction to that incredibly bizarre. He had an incredibly bizarre childhood.
Yeah.
Like really bizarre.
So here's a question: What role did class play in the Suicide Club?
Class?
Yeah.
We were all middle class kids from the suburbs and small towns, and mostly in San Francisco. A couple people from the city. I'd say middle class and working class, and then we had our what do you call them? Our nominal poverty-stricken guy, Henry Petrofita, who grew up in the housing projects and was one of the wittiest guys around, and was constantly making fun of all the middle class tropes, like constantly, just really needling the shit out of us. Very smart guy, but he was totally, absolutely. He had 7 brothers, all with different fathers. He grew up in the Folsom Street housing project. So there were a couple people from the underclass or from the poor, but there were several gay people, which was at the time. Only a couple blacks, maybe over time, maybe 2 or 3. Communiversity was a much more diverse group because it was a much broader base.
That sounds almost, yeah. I mean, the communiversity sounds like an anarchist or a yippie kind of move.
Part of the free school movement, I mean, it was. It had a lot of that in it, but so you have to realize it started in 1970, which was 6 years or 7 years before I got involved, and it had already kind of devolved into basically an event, basically a social, cultural kind of group rather than an educational thing. I think when it started, I doubt it was. I mean, I've seen the old calendars and calendars. There were more hardcore classes about actual.
They came straight out of the anti-war movement. Straight out of it.
Well, the free university movement, it came out of the free speech movement, to be specific. It was inspired by the free speech movement. But with that said, by the time we were doing it, Gary Warren had kind of commandeered the entire communiversity scene and was using it to promote the idea of people basically creating their fantasy worlds. He didn't care about class. He didn't care about people learning how to do conversational French or how to fix a VW. He did in a way because he came from that world. And he thought, to him, that was natural that people would trade.
The utilitarian aspect.
Trade their skills. I mean, there was a thing called the skills exchange, which is part of communiversity, where you would list what your skills were and what your needs were, and then the idea was that you go, I need somebody to build me like a whatever over here, and I'm going to trade them by doing massage work on it, or by like making tofu for them, or whatever. You trade these. And the idea is a really good idea, and in effect it works sometimes, but in the long run it's very difficult to maintain something like that. Americans don't value anything that's free. If it's free, you have an instantaneous aversion to it. It's like it has no value.
It's not
if it's free, it's valueless. Regardless of what the actual thing is, the actual thing could be fabulous. Like the best Suicide Club events, which you'd pay $1 for to gas sharing cost or whatever, could change your life, and in some cases did. The better ones. And other ones are totally silly and blew up in your face. There's a whole range. There's no quality control. No quality control, right? That's important because it allowed a lot of things to happen that normally would just be excised because of control.
Does it sometimes feel like the current administration has taken the playbook straight out of the Cacophony Society? The rule book? Does the current administration look like it's taken the playbook straight out of Suicide Club to just treat the whole world like?
He's taking it right out of the evil clown, meme or the evil clown archetype, 100%, which was part of Cacophony. The evil clown meme, L.A. Cacophony was all about evil clowns, about evil clowns. SF Cacophony, not so much.
So the film noir gangster opportunist.
Well, Trump Trump is he's Ubu Roy. Trump is Ubu Roy. He's
Yeah.
the fucking pig king.
He's Nero. Yeah.
He's Ubu Roy, and as that character, he's completely negated any kind of objective, intelligent, construct for politics or for economics. He's a clown, and yes, I mean he's the victory of Dada.
Yeah.
Is what he is.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
He's the victory of Dada. Dada won.
Yeah.
And here's what we get.
Jesus is a sausage.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
about to run out of battery. Any last words?
Don't hurt me. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt the general public. Have fun and don't get caught.
It didn't bother me.
Whatever battery time is left.
One of these young guys who's really doing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm Dave, by the way.
Dave, nice to meet you. I'm Eugene.
Eugene
is part of the cruise and one of the creators of the most amazing underground events happening in the Bay Area the last 5-6 years.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
Yes.
That's me.
Loved your questions.
Oh, great. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.